how the work how their everyday work is accessible to the local church, to allow the local church to help bring about flourishing. And so and then after they've each shared, I'm going to send them to a table and give you guys the opportunity to speak with each one of them individually. We're going to do it in a round robin sort of a way, so I would like you to be free to move to whoever you want to learn more from, rather than just always do the whole thing in a large group setting. Nice. So so we'll mix it up a little bit. I think that will be much more helpful. So with us today is Shawn Morrison. Shawn is the Executive Director of Good in the Hood, which I just love the name of that organization. And they have an amazing way to allow people to be entrepreneurs for themselves and develop the ability to make a living while developing business skills. Susan Hewitt is the Executive Director of UpWorks. UpWorks is dedicated to allowing people to develop their employment skills. And I'll let her tell you more about that. And then Daniel Trautmann is Executive Director of, what's your new name?
Well, it's Publish for Africa is the reorganized name.
Okay, the reorganized name is
Publish for All.
It used to be Publish for All, now it's Publish for Africa. And again, he has got a business model that allows people to not only publish, but do so in a way that can generate revenue. It is a real interesting way to do it. And so with that, Daniel, why don't you go ahead and share first, and we'll just go down the line, and yeah.
So Publish for All, again, we're through a reorganization. We now refer to ourselves as Publish for Africa. But it was birthed in the mind of two individuals, one born in Ghana, the other born in Brazil. And there's a desperate need for Christian literature in the majority world. They just don't have access. Those that have access to the books, they're high priced, and they're from the external publishing world. Very little being done locally with local authors. Publish for All is a all-inclusive, customized bookmaking solution for the majority. We're in 105 different locations in 61 different nations. But we're consolidating our focus now to primarily be focused on sub-Saharan Africa, not exclusively, but primarily sub-Saharan Africa, because the opportunity is great, the church is growing, and they're in desperate need of good literature at an accessible price. So this print-on-demand network is something that is a real whole life discipleship model. It's interesting that it developed separately, organizationally, theoretically, theologically here in the Twin Cities, and in Nairobi, Kenya, independent of our organizational machinations. One of our print centers began by reaching out to the Kibera slums, taking men out of the Kibera slums, giving them, men who had no education, giving them a skill, teaching them a trade, producing books. And they began to produce books, but all the time the director was coming alongside of them, instructing them on how to make books, how to do quality books, how to deal with grumpy customers, how to deal with different tribal. If you know anything about Africa, tribalism is a real problem. And now they have men from different tribes working together and working out their differences. And they're learning to trade, they're earning a living, they're now making enough money to send their children to school. And all the time the director is laughing with them, crying with them, praying with them, eating with them. And it becomes a whole life discipleship model that's self-sustaining, because not only are they giving people vocational skills, they're also giving them the opportunity to grow their technical skills and their spiritual life at the same time. So it's this integration of faith, work, and economics that just works on a practical level. So we have 6 principles we talk about. We're forming a social franchise in Africa. And the 6 principles that it's built on is book producing, revenue generating, job creating, education enhancing, character building, and neighbor serving. The neighbor serving being the Jeremiah passage where it says, when you're in exile, seek the peace and prosperity of the city that you're in. And we do that through education. We do that through printing the parts catalog for a manufacturer that will never go to a church, to be able to provide a quality service and do that as our rightful spiritual service, in service to the Lord, but in service to the neighborhood, providing a witness on all sorts of levels with the hope and for the opportunity to share the reason for our hope. So it's a way of integrating faith, work, and economics that's very pragmatic from an educational standpoint and from a manufacturing standpoint. So that's the Publish for All part. For me, the journey's been personal. I grew up in the shadow of a missionary auntie, and she was the saint, and she truly was. She was a wonderful person, dedicated her life to teaching in Bolivia. I knew more about Bolivian history than I knew about American history as a kid. And those of you that are at college campuses, you know, the little wool hats with the little dangly ties underneath it that were made out of llama skin and stuff. I was trendy, but I got beat up for it. You know, I wear these goofy hats back in the 60s to school because my auntie was a missionary in Bolivia. But I grew up with a false impression of ministry. I grew up with this pyramid of careers, and I was trained that if you really want to serve God, be a missionary. And if you can't be a missionary, at least aspire to be a pastor. And if you weren't spiritual enough to be a pastor, be an elder. And if you were too worldly to be an elder, teach Sunday school. And if you were so backslidden that you couldn't teach Sunday school, then open your wallet and give it to full-time Christian workers.
Wow.
And that is not the model. That is good news. The good news is whatever you have your hand to do it heartily as unto the Lord. And I do that through printing. I was trained to be a missionary. 4 years at the missionary training school in Bloomington, Minnesota. But God called me into the printing industry for a time such as this, and we're placing book-producing plants all around the world, especially in Africa, so the gospel can be heard, and a whole life discipleship model is what motivates us to create revenue so that people can know good news and a full gospel in the sense of integrating every part of our life and going back to that kind of cultural mandate. And now we're trying to institute that in our little congregation on Franklin and Cedar called Firehouse Chapel. And there's a little brochure on the tables which I stole the Made to Flourish value statements. But if you want to take a look at that, it's really difficult to change the culture of a church. And as pastors and leaders, how do you change a culture? It's not a program. You have to change language, you have to change behaviors, and it's got to be bought. You have to have buy-in of everybody. How do you change cultures? And that's my concern. And you guys are experts in many ways. I just have been able to have the privilege of practicing this on a personal, on a local, and on a global basis through Publish for All.
Dana, share with them just real briefly how technology has allowed you to create these publishing businesses in Africa for how much?
Yeah, the whole print shop, all installed, shipping, customs, training, is around $40,000. To start a business that creates educational material on every level, but especially Christian education, but every level from literacy training to public health textbooks.
I've had the privilege of seeing one of these systems, and it's utterly amazing. The cloud delivers the content, and then the machines, with the computers and things like that, the next thing you know, and a book comes out. And it's utterly amazing.
We say that most publishers still work on a Johann Gutenberg model. You print the books and then you distribute them. So we have warehouses full of books, all the expense of shipping them around the world. What we do is we turn that around. We distribute first the digital file through a cloud library, so it's accessible to all of our print centers anywhere in the world, and then we print locally. So we distribute and print as opposed to print and distribute.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
That answers an important question, because I thought printing was going to be Neanderthal very soon with all this going on.
It's interesting, I was at a bookstore in St. Paul, and I asked the bookstore owner that question about younger people. And he said, look it over there in the corner. And there were a few kids sitting there chatting it up with books in front of them. Because even though they had their Kindles and their iPads with them, there's something about the tangible ability to fold and dog-ear a page, underline it with a pen. And I think it really relates to spiritual wisdom. It's the small, still voice of the Lord. It's not the loud YouTube video that trains people, that transforms people. It's that chewing on the same page and going back to that again and again. That's hard to do on a Kindle. But books really do still have power, and especially in the majority world, where a book can be shared more readily and devices don't have to be powered up and they don't get broken at a cost to replace.
Daniel, thank you very much. Susan, tell us about UpWorks.
Well, I'm probably the extreme opposite, very grassroots. We work with the local church, and we see our role, or our call actually, as facilitating Christians in congregations to connect with community work, sharing God's love and His care for them. So probably the easiest way to explain, I always say, is on your table, there's probably 3 items that you should find. The first, the dark green one, says invest in others. So if you open it up, the best way to figure us out is by this little graph in the middle. We partner with 8 Christian, well, actually not all Christian, we partner with 8 nonprofits that refer us clients, and we only have 2 criteria for them referring us clients: that the client be motivated to work and willing to meet with our volunteers for 1 hour a week for about 12 weeks. And these nonprofits include Minnesota Dalton Teen Challenge, Metro Hope, Wilder Foundation, Urban Homeworks, Emerge Mothers Academy, Safe Families for Children. So it's a lot of different places. Most of our volunteers, clients really come from addiction, or they're impoverished in some way. And so then UpWorks does an intake on those clients, and then we pair them with our volunteers, which we call life advocates. So if a Christian member from your church wanted to volunteer with UpWorks, they'd attend 1 4-hour training where we train them on working cross-culturally. I call it coaching to empowerment. It's just some basic how to ask good questions, because if you give the person the answer, they really didn't learn to solve their own problems and gain that self-confidence. So we do that, how to do faith sharing in the public arena, and then kind of the mechanics of our programs. So we have a training this Saturday, 9 to 1. They're offered about once a month. So we then, though, pair usually 2 men with a man and 2 women with a woman. One reason is that honestly, the Christians appreciate being able to go with someone else to meet the client. So we facilitate the first matching meeting. Kevin Saunders on my team, so you probably found his business card in this brochure. He does the intake and he does the matching. And then truly the 3 people figure out when they're going to meet next for the next meeting. So it really is, you can meet for coffee, at a library, daytime, lunch hour, Saturday, whatever works for all 3 people. And then you really start 1 hour a week for 12 weeks. While this is going on, UpWorks helps that individual find a job. And what we say is, truly in today's economy in the Twin Cities, we can get you a job interview tomorrow. Now that's not maybe going to be a job that you're going to want to do long term, and maybe not at a livable wage, but we can get you a job. But then we realize that our mission statement is celebrating and developing each person's God-given potential to contribute to our world. So we want to do some self-discovery with that client and say, how has God uniquely wired you? Are you more analytical? Do you want a people job? What do you like healthcare? And so then the life advocate volunteers, Christians, as they're going through, they help the client set 3-month goals for education and employment. Now this doesn't get them to the finish line, but at least it gets them on the path to that journey. And truly in the Twin Cities right now, you can go to Summit Academy for free to do construction, that you can, many programs they have, St. Paul Community College and MCTC. If you're impoverished, you can get Pell Grants and go to college for free. So we help them get on that path, set those goals. The other thing we do, so that's about a half hour of that meeting each week, is working on those goals, setting small steps to keep moving forward. The other half hour is usually spent on holistic discipleship, what I heard you saying. So we use a book put out by Paul Botts, who lives in Edina, and Tim Schmidt, who works for Thrivent. And they put out a book called What Really Works. And they came up with 7 F's, because how you show up to work on Monday morning is dependent on your whole life. So the F's are faith, family, finances, fitness, friends, fun, and future. Because you know whatever you did on Saturday night, or if you have problems at home, or all those things come with you as you show up to work. So we tried, like we said, to really care for them holistically. When we started this, is called our Empowering Adults program. I thought there'd be a little change. It is amazing. Most of our clients have never had a lot of people that give them encouragement, that are there for them every week. And when we see the intake questionnaires versus the exit and hear their testimonies, seriously, for most people, it's life-changing. To just have someone in your corner. And we say you don't have to be retired or whatever. Anyone that has had a positive, and is employed can be a great life advocate. We have 30-year-olds that are great life advocates, and we have 82-year-olds. So that's our Empowering Adults. And this actually little flyer is just testimony from some of the clients. The second initiative we just started this year is we're seeking to have actually every Christian church in the Twin Cities adopt their local school. And part of it is our schools are asking for help. They're in need of assistance. They are open to volunteers. And so what UpWorks' role is, again, we facilitate the relationship. So we meet with your school superintendent to be polite and say, hey, we'd love to solicit and recruit churches to come and partner with the school. We have had wide open success. In fact, then from that step, if the superintendent says great, we host what we call cafe meetings, just like this. We host a breakfast, and usually what happened in Bloomington just a couple weeks ago, superintendent introduced Sue Timmerman, whose business card's in your packet, and she told a little bit about how we facilitate those church-school partnerships. And actually 19 of the 20 principals signed up and said, we want to have this done. So we try to partner at least 2 churches with every school, so that if one has to drop out for a reason, the school's not left alone. Actually, this is all based on a model out of Portland and Phoenix. In fact, I had met the gal who was doing it in Phoenix about 5 years ago at a Reggie McNeil conference that was talking about collective impact. And really, the way to make sustainable change is how do we collaborate as the church, as the school, as the community agencies to really wrap around these families in need. So yes, easy to get it facilitated and started, and then we ask for a church contact that works with the school contact that facilitates the volunteering. So we have breakfast buddies, we have reading buddies, tutors, wide variety. What we say is, though, we want the school to tell us what their goals are and how does the church help the school to accomplish their goals. It's not about us coming in with an agenda, and yet, no, we can't be, actually somebody said, can I wear a church name badge? Well, no, we're there to share the love and care of Christ. And if asked, we can share the reason of our hope. But so actually, we'd love to work either, like we said, on help you to have some individual relationships or work holistically with a school. But it's all about developing each person's ability and for Christians actually to live out your faith. Is actually one of my insights that God has given me is and I heard you say there's the missionary, the pastor, the Sunday school teacher. I think we in America have a wrong definition of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. It is about love God with your whole heart, soul, mind, and strength. and love your neighbor as yourself. And God convicted me about 15 years ago that I was the Good Samaritan parable. I was the Christian religious person going by on the other side of the road. And I needed to get off the donkey, go across, get my hands dirty, invest some time. So all of our programs are relationship focused. That's where life transformation happens. So, thank you. Yes. Yep.
And one of the reasons why I'm always excited to bring Susan around to meet with pastors and introduce her to local churches is because I often hear about how local churches would like to, we'd love to help in the school, or we'd love to do something. But the church doesn't have time to put that together. And they don't have to, because Susan's organization has put together the how-to. What we need to do is just partner with her to be doing it. And so that's the huge value added for the local church is the how-to. It's been taken care of.
And you know, I want, if I may add one more little piece. Actually, on April 7th, we're at Wayzata E-Free doing a regional gathering training. So back to this, helping the local church. They have invited every different denomination within like a 5-mile radius of their church to come and bring their members. And we're going to do some of the training on cross-cultural when helping hurts and that in the morning. And then have lunch together. And then we're inviting 9, 10, somewhere there, we have to finalize that, different nonprofits that utilize volunteers in a relational way. And so then people get to vote in the afternoon with their feet. So if you're passionate about unwed mothers that are pregnant, you can go volunteer with New Life Family Services. If you want to help families in crisis, you could do Together for Good with Marriott Sandberg. If you want to do prison fellowship. So that way, because what we see as well is the whole community is strengthened when Christians are shining their light of Christ into people's lives. And we know if you're serving in your passion area, you'll serve for longer and it'll be sustainable. So we're going to try this pilot in Wayzata, April 7th. So if you have any interest in joining us there, but then we're going to try, I heard somebody, where's Woodbury? There you are.
There we are.
We're hoping maybe in the fall of next year doing kind of regional ones, but showing how the church can really work together for the good of the neighborhood. So thank you.
Thank you for being a leader in all of this in the community. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Shawn, like I said, he's the executive director of Good in the Hood, and you get to tell them about what you do with people's feet.
Well, yeah. Yes, we do. We work with their souls. How's that? Don't get me started. We all wrestle with discipleship, and I think that's what we're talking about here, whole life discipleship. And one of the things that's hit me is at 6 weeks in the Lord, people are so passionate about Jesus. And then by the time they hit 6 years, what happened? And it's as if we're discipling into passivity. And so it breaks my heart. And I'm going, something's not working, something's broken. We all recognize that, but what are we doing? And we're trying to figure it out. And what I think the best model for discipleship is the family. It's the God-given one. So first I'd like to share, I'm a husband, and I'm a father of 5. 2 of my oldest boys are adopted, one's deaf, and it's been a privilege to be that. And that has taught me more about discipleship. It's as if we've got an 18-year plan, and if not a lifelong plan, right there. That's our basis, in my opinion. I think that's our biblical basis. We always try to figure out how we do it, and yet it's sitting, I think, right under our noses. And I'm also a grandfather. You're going to laugh because you'll think my children are rabbits because I have 5 kids and 12 grandchildren. So maybe beat that. I might be setting a Guinness Book of Records by the end of this term, but it's just been a joy. And we've gone through trials and challenges. We had sextuplets, one of our kids, and we lost 5 of them. And so this has not been easy. And that's what discipleship is. It's not just all about the bells and whistles and the celebrations. It's about the challenges. It's about life on life. So when we think of whole life discipleship, I have my 3 H's. I don't have the 7 F's. You guys, that's what a memory. Heart, which is regeneration, head, renewing the mind, but hand, which is that practical aspect. That's the practitioner part.
That sounds like the 4-H club.
Yeah. Well, it could be. I was a 4-H member. I just couldn't remember the fourth, so I just left it
And
at 3.
hard hands and health.
Exactly. So anyway, just to kind of fast forward, I started Good in the Hood in 2003, and where I got the name was out of, somebody asked me what verse, and it was really out of Romans chapter 2, verse 4. The loving kindness of God leads to repentance. So it was going to be kindness, inspiring neighborhood decency, out the word kind. Just wasn't quite as attractive. And then I began praying, and I realized the urban community has often been branded a hood or a ghetto, and it is not that. I was going to name it Good in the Neighborhood, but Mr. Rogers had that. So I just decided to go with Good in the Hood and then make sure there's a clear apostrophe before the H, because we're not trying to say the city's a ghetto. It's just the opposite. We want God to redeem what the world has deemed a ghetto and make it into clearly a community that He loves, community cares for. And so we're Good in the Hood, trying to inspire intentional kindness. We're not against random acts. We just actually won the Brooklyn Center Random Acts of Kindness Award, and I was like, no, but we're trying to be intentional. I didn't turn it down, but all that to say, then I also was working at Bethany, which is where Daniel and I, it's our alma mater, and we real practitioner-based missionary training, so I'm a missionary at heart, but I pastored for several years, and I was invited in 2006 to come on board at Cedarcrest Free Methodist Church as an interim pastor. I didn't even know what a Free Methodist was. So I had to learn, I had to enculturate, but it fit who I was, because it was a strong emphasis towards the poor, towards those who were broken, and how to bring flourishing communities, or how to bring a flourishing future for communities. And they appoint a pastor not merely to a church, but to a community. They want you to not be in the community, but before the community. So it was a really good fit. And so I proposed to this church that was dying. It was down to about 25 people. Most of them had done the thing that I think one of you said retired, and it should have been refired, and which I really appreciate that, because they were in their late 70s, early 80s, thinking they'd done their good deeds, and they were wonderful people who had a heart, who had been risk takers, but had no more vision. Their vision was the grave, and so we said, let's look at what we can do. There's a lot of things we can't do. We're not going to have this flourishing youth ministry. Well, what can we do? And so we said, we can feed the community. This is back in 2006, before all that mortgage foreclosure hit Bloomington and all the other first and second ring suburbs. We were preparing, didn't really know we were preparing for that. We were preparing for the influx of poor to come into the East Bloomington community. And so we started a really large ministry called the 911, which was 9 families a month that we would sponsor with 1 week's worth of groceries for 1 year. I'm being tongue-in-cheek when I say large, because it was 9 families, which was a modest goal, but for a church of 25, that was a big deal. And I said, here's how it's going to have to work. Good in the Hood will provide all the food. Good in the Hood will bring in the resources and even bring in the volunteers. You, church, have to be willing to use your facility and do it at no cost. Which began a way of doing things for Good in the Hood, when we created an internal partnership with an external partnership. And so we've replicated that several times over. But we started this 911, and they were excited. They had a sense of urgency using the 911 moniker. They recognized that this is a way we can be something that makes a difference, even if we can't be everything. And so that lasted 1 month, and then the food program turned into a 21-1. And in 3 months, it was a 51-1. Now we've just got rid of the 1-1. It's 500 families we're feeding every month out of this little church that is only about 50 people. But it's making a difference. They took on this as a mission, and how I like to illustrate it is the church is the boat and the community that brings people together, and Good in the Hood serves as the nets into the water. And so we're trying to capture communities. And the interesting thing is, I pastor a church on Sunday morning of 50, and I probably pastor a church of about 125 throughout the week who aren't necessarily coming to church. I'm the one they're calling when they have a funeral, when they have a hospital visit, when, that type of thing. So it keeps me very busy. We actually have a team of 3 pastors and a local ministerial candidate, and it keeps us really busy. So, and that's just a church of 50. But what we had to do is fund this thing. And this thing kept growing. We're in 2 colleges now, 8 public schools. We have a mobile program. We're at Workforce Center in North Minneapolis. We're in North Minneapolis at a church. We're doing food as a gateway, because we do provision. Then we have the second P, we got all our P's now, participation, and then partnership. We want food to be a gateway. We want the real key is to, in partnership with others, create participation where recipients become volunteers and learn about task, and where then those volunteers become stakeholders as leaders, and they learn about responsibility. That's the linchpin. That's what I found. That's where they suddenly realize they're no longer just getting a giveaway or a throwaway. They're getting invested into, and there's an expectation that they have to reproduce too, just like my children reproduce. So, so they've learned that well, so I'm now trying to do that in the discipleship model. And so we started this 911, it grew to 500 families, but we had to fund it. And so one day somebody comes up to me and they said, do you know anybody who could use a semi-load of winter clothes? And I literally said, yes. I had no clue how I was going to use it. And that's often how I operate, sadly, is I say yes and then figure it out. And I didn't know what I was getting into. So they bring it up. It was about $1,500 to get it transported, and I thought I could bear that. And we would make, do some kind of thrift program or something to recover the costs. Well, I get it in, and the guy who is the semi-driver needs to get that unloaded in 2 hours, turned around. I don't have a dock, I don't have a warehouse. I had just rented some containers on our property. We had to quick unload it, had a few people, 80-pound bags, 350 of them. We were hurting by the end of that day, but we got it done in 2 hours. Now I had the dilemma, what do I do with this funding mechanism? Well, I contacted a local thrift guy that St. Vincent de Paul is a good friend of mine, and Ed said, well, I'll buy that from you. I said, I could use winter clothes. He says, I'll pay you 20 cents a pound. So it was 30,000 pounds, so you figure out the math, but it became quite lucrative. And I thought, that's a good deal. So I started getting these semi-loads. Well, Ed one day comes up to me and he goes, but if you ever get shoes, he said, I'll pay 55 cents a pound. I'm not a mathematician, but that seemed like a lot better deal and a lot lighter. So I said, yeah. So I started noodling around with some thoughts, and I go, people need shoes and boots. Why don't we give a boot to hunger? And then I realized it's pretty seasonal. And then the word shoe away hit me, and all of a sudden I had the name tag, Shoe Away Hunger. And we started collecting shoes. So one of the largest church in Minnesota, Eagle Brook, got a hold of this with me, and they said, we want a project for our kids. Could we do a shoe collection for you? So we've been doing, this is in 2012. In 3 weeks, they collected 11 pallets of shoes that netted us about $6,000. And that just kept growing and growing and growing. We now have a bus, we actually have 2 buses, just got a second bus this week, that we've turned into a thrift store. We go to places where the impoverished are. We work with food shelves and that. We offer the shoes for suggested donation of $5, and it pays for hunger relief. And we get 3 things out of this. We get to lovingly show the gospel in demonstration to every person we encounter. Sometimes it's the people who do it with us, as well as the people we seemingly are serving. We get to put high quality shoes in the feet of those in need. I didn't realize that was even a great need until a mom and her daughter came to our church in January in flip-flops. That's all they had. 2 weeks ago, we moved over 1,000 pair of boots for families in need. Some of these were boots we offered them for $10, suggested donation. These were muck boots, toe warmers, Schuler shoes, Red Wing, $250 pair if you go online. We got to give those away for $10. Everything then goes to pay for hunger relief. We need to make about $100,000 a year to feed the 4,000 people that we're feeding every month, and that's happening right now. Last year we surpassed that. So it's a social enterprise, and what it does, it feeds the hungry, puts shoes on the feet of the poor, lets us lovingly share the gospel. But what's really I like to say, the thing that's also happening is it creates job training opportunities for our people that we work with, both the ones we directly work with and we subcontract with other groups like Ujama Place who come in and they want job training. And so they learn how to sort shoes, how to inventory shoes, how to do customer management, or customer service. They learn how to do various things related to a business. And so it has become really a win for us. All of that is really discipleship. That's just engaging people in real life, because here was my other contention about discipleship, and then I'll close. Not only were we discipling people into passivity, we had, as a Christian culture, gotten really focused on making sure everybody understood their value. And that was a really important thing. But what we lost sight of is we helped people know they were valuable, but we left them useless. And we can't do one at the expense of the other. This has got to go hand in glove. They have to know that there's a future. Otherwise, like Wesley would have said, he goes, you get them saved, and then you leave them without any opportunities. He says, and now they're tempted to steal again. And that's not good discipleship. And so I really believe we need to do both. And so that's what we do. So thank you for letting me be here.
Thank you.